Einen wunderschönen guten Abend, sehr geehrte Damen und Herren. Liebe Freunde, kann ich an vieler Stelle auch sagen, viele der Gesichter haben uns über die letzten 3 Tage begleitet. Wir stehen am Ende von 2 Tagen eines Kongresses, der sich der Zukunft des deutschen Films gewidmet hat. Und ich würde sagen, wir haben über den deutschen Film geredet, nicht so sehr, oder nicht in erster Linie, weil uns jetzt der deutsche Film am Herzen liegt, sondern weil uns allen Film und Kino am Herzen liegt und weil wir finden, dass auch hier in diesem Land, in dieser Stadt besseres Kino entstehen kann, als es das jetzt tut. Wir haben die Gelegenheit, dass wir in Frankfurt an der Spitze einer der größten Institutionen für Filmkultur ein neues Gesicht haben und dass Harrington, die neue Direktorin des Deutschen Filminstituts, eben von außen nach Deutschland gekommen ist, dass sie vielleicht auch diese Filmkultur erwählt hat, ja, aus guten Gründen. Und deswegen haben wir gedacht, es wäre doch ein passender Auftakt für diese Abschlussrunde zu hören, sozusagen, was ist der Blick von außen auf Filmkultur, was ist also auf deutsche Filmkultur, aber Filmkultur im Allgemeinen, wo sieht eine Institution wie das DIF, die Neuleiterin einer Institution wie das DIF, die Chancen, Potenziale, den Reichtum von Filmkultur, und deswegen sind wir sehr froh, dass wir Harrington da haben. Ich habe das alles auf Deutsch gesagt, weil ich weiß, dass Sie schon sehr viel gelernt haben in der letzten Zeit. Sie kam ja hier nach Frankfurt und hat gesagt, naja, sie kann immerhin Englisch, Französisch, Spanisch, Italienisch, glaube ich. Dann wird das mit dem Deutsch auch noch klappen. Ich glaube, da ist sie auf einem guten Weg. Und diese Sprachvielfalt zeugt auch, glaube ich, davon, dass sie sozusagen einen Blick hat, der von den USA geprägt ist, aber auch von vielen anderen Stationen ihres Weges. Und deswegen sage ich, welcome Harrington, und we're very curious to hear your ideas. Thank you.
Someone thought I was very tall, but I'm not. So, thank you. Guten Abend, meine sehr verehrten Damen und Herren. I am honored to represent the Deutsche Filminstitut and Museum as its new director, and we are pleased to be a cooperation partner of the Congress. I'd like to begin by expressing my thanks to Gregor Maria Schubert and Johanna Süß, the Lichter Festival directors, and legendary filmmaker Edgar Reitz, who initiated this Congress, and the idea that the theme of change should be debated here. And I'm delighted to be at the Frankfurt Zoo for the first time. I recently learned that the former zoo director, Bernhard Zimmek, was also a filmmaker, and he was the first German director to win an Oscar in 1960 for the documentary Serengeti darf nicht sterben. So the place has a special connection to cinema history, and it seems an appropriate place to discuss its future. So, on to the topic at hand. When I became a film historian, and I was an art historian before, I very quickly noticed a cyclical pattern. Although cinema is a deep and complex marriage of form and content, every major shift in technology or market forces has been met with a certain amount of panic. The death of cinema has been foretold numerous times. For example, when sound was introduced and the silent film industry was decimated, or when the arrival of television in every living room threatened the existence of theater chains. The filmmakers had to fight back with new genres such as musicals or dialogue-heavy women's pictures, or new gimmicks to encourage people to leave their homes, such as various widescreen formats. And today, it's movie theaters where you can get a meal served at your table and a nice glass of wine. Today, television continues to innovate with such forms as the limited series, which can be binged-watched on demand and seen in a variety of personal screening devices. Film studios in the US are always going bankrupt, being bought by Japanese manufacturing firms or whatever international entity has the most cash in that decade, firing their chiefs, losing money on big-budget films, or buying each other, as Disney has just done with 20th Century Fox. It's useful to remember that innovation generally arises from the ashes of failure, and challenging existing systems and predetermined assumptions is an essential part of the creative process. No matter what structural mechanisms result from the discussions that are taking place here, I'm an optimist about the future of cinema because I see limitless potential for human expression in this particular medium. I'm a true believer in the power and cultural significance of visual storytelling because I think it is baked into human nature to seek meaning through narrative. From cave paintings through the development of every artistic medium invented so far in human history, people have sought to tell stories through images, and I think this will never stop. Film became the defining art form of the 20th century because of its unique ability to convey visual images and narratives that connect emotionally and intellectually with an audience in a thoroughly unique way. It has yet to relinquish this role to any new art form, and it has a fighting chance of retaining this prime position if filmmakers can keep innovating as they have for the past 13 decades or more. I also want to stress that film production must be seen as part of a much larger organic whole, which has to do with the sustainability of the medium. Making the film, and even getting it seen by audiences, is not enough of an end goal. Film must be seen as a living thing that has a perpetual life cycle with several additional stages. So the role of archives, such as the one at the Deutsche Film Institute, is essential. People generally know that much early cinematic history has been lost, but the loss of recent films must also be addressed. Filmmakers and producers need to partner throughout their careers with archives to ensure that their content is properly preserved and won't disappear, because disappear it will. A DCP, a DVD, many other contemporary formats are not a stable storage medium. Archivally supervised digitization is part of the solution, and so too are traditional celluloid prints and photochemical restorations. Currently, as movie theaters worldwide are dumping their film projectors and going digital, storage depots and film studios are also dumping negatives, film prints, and other invaluable process materials. Film archives around the world are currently accepting, if they have space and budget, thousands of pallets of film materials that often include some irreplaceable elements. For example, this happened last year at the Academy Film Archive when a call came in from a distribution depot in New York City and asked if they would accept, sight unseen with no inventory, several hundred pallets of 35mm and 70mm film. It turned out that original negatives, answer prints, outtakes, and various edits from many of the Coen brothers' films were on those pallets, along with many other significant directors. And even those famous filmmakers themselves did not know that their archive was about to go into the landfill. So it was a pretty scary moment, and I'm really happy that they made that phone call. Now back to the next steps in the life cycle concept. Once the films are saved, it benefits not just the filmmakers whose work has been preserved. It becomes precious source material for restorations and for public screenings. The role of the Cinematheque, film festivals, and art house cinemas in this life cycle should be just as important to filmmakers as the funding sources for new work. This is where cinema continues to be a living, breathing entity, presented to an audience that will keep the history and legacy of those films alive for future generations to experience and enjoy. I see this happening each day in the vital screening programs and education work being done at the Deutsche Film Museum, as well as many other organizations in Frankfurt and around the country. This is where the love of film arises in the hearts of those that will go on to create whatever comes next in the world of cinema. So a complete circle is the only possible way if attention is paid to all of these stages. One of the major reasons I came to Germany a few months ago from the US was because of the deep commitment on the part of cultural heritage organizations to this concept that preserving, restoring, digitizing, documenting, and presenting cinema history is a vital cultural priority, supported by institutions and government at the national, state, and city level. This is distinctly different from the approach in the United States, which, apart from a few large entities like the Library of Congress, is entirely privately funded by individuals, foundations, and corporations. So in this area, I really value and admire the German approach, and am grateful that attention is being paid to the second half of the life cycle that I described. When it comes to German film production and its funding model, this also differs entirely from the way things work in the United States. I know you heard from a number of European experts in the past few days about how things work in their particular countries, and I'm sure you probably know in the US, the government is completely hands-off and provides no funding for filmmakers. The system in place here in Germany and many other countries that offers filmmaking subsidies is greatly envied by American filmmakers who largely rely on family, credit cards, and assuming other debt to raise the money they need for independent films and documentaries. New crowdfunding options online have been a big improvement and also serve as a way to test market your film idea to a broad public audience before it gets made. Then the usual route for an up-and-coming filmmaker is to try to get accepted at film festivals. This is also a money-losing proposition once travel costs are added in. The goal, which is really no more of a guarantee than rolling the dice, is to sell your film to a distributor after a festival screening. This happens quite rarely, actually, despite the occasional headline news about a bidding war for a specific film at Sundance. Ironically, often the films that play best under these circumstances do not go on to great box office success, though festival success is often one of the stepping stones to being hired as a director by a production company or a studio, though the odds on that one also remain pretty poor. And yet thousands of people are trying in the US right now to get their films made through one of these methods. As part of my work in the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, I founded our international outreach program, which sought to blend cultural diplomacy with practical filmmaking trainings in countries around the world. In that role, I was able to see the inner workings of the filmmaking systems in place in many other regions outside of the US. Our targets were places where some sort of opening appeared to be taking place, whether it was political, social, or economic. For example, we went to Vietnam in the early 2000s when the government Ministry of Culture decided to step away from a system of absolute control over production, which included script approval and funding, and it resulted in very few and extremely uninteresting movies. And they only released them during 2 weeks of the year, and really nobody wanted to see them. The door was opened after that point to a young generation of filmmakers, some of whom had trained outside the country, some of whom got practical experience on international films that were shooting in Vietnam as a location. They were able to leverage some Japanese television co-financing, family savings, a few loans, and a strong network of fellow artists who also helped out on each other's films. Filmmaking associations and training sessions, such as those the Academy offered, were the seeds of strong and collaborative community. In a country where literally every film up to that point had been shot silently and dubbed in post-production, we went into the streets and taught the filmmakers how to shoot synchronous sound in outdoor environments. This was in 2006. A decade later, there's a strong art film tradition emerging from Vietnam. Numerous festival prizes have been awarded, as well as growing commercial film market paired with rapid movie theater construction. I think behind China, they have the fastest rate of movie theater construction. People there have plenty of smartphones too, but the communal and social experience of film going is becoming important to their culture. We did projects in various other places, such as Cuba, Iran, East Africa, the Balkan states, and the Middle East. Each one customized to meet the technical training needs of the local filmmakers, combined with an effort to encourage an open marketplace for film production. The goal was never to found a major industry that would challenge Hollywood. Unfortunately, Hollywood production is just too powerful globally for any national cinema to overtake it, and I don't think they should try. Most of the films made in Hollywood aren't very good anyway, and many of those actually lose money too. In some of the other countries where we worked on the international outreach program, government censorship was the main impediment, and filmmakers had to come up with a distinct cinematic language to circumvent their edits. In other places, war or social conflict had destabilized cultural institutions and made it difficult for filmmakers to form a community, or, in the case of Cuba, even to find basic camera equipment. But in each of those places, we met with dedicated and creative individuals who were determined to tell their stories because they had a story that was so important for them to tell, so personal that they were willing to risk many things, including physical danger, economic hardship, or sometimes even jail in order to get their work made. I must tell you, the Academy members who went on those trips found them eye-opening and exhilarating. From their perch as financially successful, often studio-funded directors, writers, producers, and craftspeople, they were impressed and astonished at the passion and tolerance for adversity that these artists embodied. In Iran, we rose one day at 6 a.m. to drive to a theater far outside the center of Tehran to see a film we had heard about and to meet its maker. 2 hours later, we emerged from the theater stunned at the brilliance of Asghar Farhadi and his early work about Ellie. Our enthusiastic response to his work encouraged the Iranian government, against a lot of odds, to submit that film for Oscar consideration in the foreign language category. And while it did not win that year, Asghar Farhadi obviously went on to win for both A Separation and The Salesman. For me, A Separation remains one of the most exquisite examples of a nearly perfect film. Extremely specific in its locale and situation, yet so deeply human that people around the world can connect emotionally with its characters and feel its central conflicts in a deep and profound way. Michael Haneke, who appeared last month at the Deutsche Film Museum, chose A Separation as one of the films that he presented in his carte blanche that we just screened. And I find it telling and very reassuring that the auteur behind The White Ribbon and Amour sees this film as a creative touchstone for himself. In every film, whether from Hollywood, Iran, Germany, or any other place, if they could accomplish half of what A Separation does, then I know that audiences are waiting. German filmmaking has a deeply complicated history, largely because of the close association between historic events and their impacts on the film industry. The role of politics in the realm of artistic production is an added layer that has only occasionally intruded into the fundamental structures of the film industry in the United States. For example, during the McCarthy era, when artists were blacklisted for supposed ties to the Communist Party. That era, of course, also led to a fierce artistic response and the creation of many excellent films exploring those times. The films from Germany that have conquered the world thus far have often been in this mode, not exclusively, but frequently, exploring trauma and emotion in a way that is extremely specific, yet relatable across every culture. Movies such as The Tin Drum, Das Boot, and The Lives of Others. Germany has historically been the home to important cinematic movements and towering international artists, and of course, German films do not need to always address war or deep social issues. Recently, just as a few very brief examples, Germany's mumblecore movement has made quite a splash internationally, and Maren Ade's extremely personal and offbeat film Toni Erdmann resonated with audiences here in Germany and also internationally, so much so that a US remake has already been announced with Kristen Wiig and Jack Nicholson. So for me, this is a film that could only have been made in Germany, and yet it can be appreciated everywhere. And with a few changes to the sense of humor, it can be made in America as well. So artists are embracing different structures for telling cinematic stories, even here, obviously, in Germany. People like Tom Tykwer and his highly acclaimed work on Babylon Berlin should be mentioned. Even Michael Haneke is now working on a 10-part television adaptation of Kelvin's book. This is a source of much debate also in the US, where the Academy is engaged in an active discussion of whether their rules should be expanded to acknowledge the films that are debut on premium cable, such as Netflix, other than just in the motion picture cinemas. Some Academy members are open to this possibility, where other heavyweights, such as Steven Spielberg, recently said that streaming services present, quote, a clear and present danger to filmgoers, and that films released by such companies could deserve an Emmy, but never an Oscar. Spielberg is also on the same board of the Academy that just this year voted to give Alejandro González Iñárritu a special Oscar for Carne y Arena, a single-viewer virtual reality experience shown only at film festivals and art museums. So, interesting conflict there. So, as I said at the beginning, the death of cinema has always been near at hand, and yet it goes on, and I believe it always will. The most important ingredient, in my opinion, is to find a story that just has to be told, or you will die trying, whether there's government funding or not, whether you can make a living as a filmmaker or not. Thank you for listening to my thoughts and reflections as you anticipate the results of the debates which took place in the Congress. I'm eager to hear which direction you'll be heading in, and I hope you all know that the incredible team that I inherited from Claudia Dillman at the Deutsche Film Institute are here as your partners for every stage in the life cycle of your film, from inspiration through production to preservation and presentation. The future of cinema and German film culture is something we work on every single day, and we're excited to see what comes next. Thanks so much.
Vielen Dank, Ellen Harrington. Thank you very much.